we'll kick things off. I'm going to spotlight our two guest speakers here. Of course, we've got Mr. Bob Coppage and kick things off. Oh, there's the echo of YouTube there. So, and then we also have Danny O'Lynn. Danny, thank you so much for being here. I'm so glad that you have very little that needs maintenance on your back desk. So it looks like you had we picked a good day. So
Hey, I put that sign over there to make myself look good. It really hangs up over there. That's
gotcha.
why my camera's pointed this way.
Right, exactly. And so today we are going to talk about unlocking co-managed IT, unlocking the opportunity to be able to grow revenue and service a different group of clients as well. Um, we all know that we have the godfather, if you will, of co-managed IT, Mr. Bob Coppage here with us. And Bob, how many books have you written now? It's got to be what, 2 dozen, 3 dozen? Uh,
Absolutely. And finding the illustrator for the children's edition has been the challenge. No, I've got 3 books out. The CEO Survival Guide to IT, the MSP Survival Guide to Co-Managed IT, and then the I Don't Want Your Job is co-managed the right fit for you, blah,
yes.
blah, blah. And they've been out, and most people in the MSP industry, you guys know all that.
Yep.
My 4th book is probably about half to 2/3 done. I'm really hoping to get that one out later this year. So
Nice, nice. And if you still have, you've got your own Facebook group for co-managed IT as well out there. And, in addition to that, I think, do you have a specific website for all the co-managed or like,
honestly, I dabbled a little bit into that whole start the coaching and some of the stuff that you're doing, quite honestly, and you are
Mhm.
significantly better at that than I am. So I really do not have at this point the coaching process in place. There's a
Okay.
commitsformsps.com site is out there, but honestly, there's not much there. If you're interested in learning more about my philosophies and theories, take a look at the books and also look at simplexits.com website. We've got a
Yeah.
ton of stuff out there specifically about co-managed from an educational standpoint, somewhat aimed at potential clients such as Danny, but just overall. And as I've always said, steal that stuff. If
Yeah.
that works, some of that messaging works for your MSP organization, all the better.
Absolutely. And you do sell your books, you make them available in like a bulk quantity, if I'm correct.
Yeah, there's a version of the book. There's actually 2 versions of the one that's written for the IT person. This is the I don't want your job. It's got my logo. It talks in the book about Simplex IT as the MSP. Then there's this one which is more generic. It talks about it from the standpoint of an MSP. So this
Yep.
would be the one. If anybody's interested, to reach out to me. This would be the one that you would give to you, an MSP would give to their potential client to explain how this is not how this program works overall.
Right.
Now, as an MSP who's looking to do this, you need to have an offering that is roughly speaking in line with this. And that's something that I hope to get into a little bit with the discussion, because not all co-managed is created equal in this industry.
Yeah. Yeah, and as we know, I mean, we can ask 100 MSPs to define what an MSP is, and we get 100 different answers. And I think the same would go for co-managed IT, because one might think that it's more of a la carte. Hey, I can sell you a variety of tools, which in the long run, if you take a look at even our own clients on the MSP side, that's not necessarily the right route to go because it's all about the expertise, the experience of all those tools, so that make up what you're ultimately going to do. Because as we've talked about so many times, it's not about the things you do, but it's what you do for your clients that makes a difference. And So with that said, Bob, I want to have you just give, start out with a little bit of an intro as far as, what we're talking about today and how this ties in with Danny. And then Danny, I'll have you jump in as well. And then as we get through this, please, anybody that has questions, feel free to shout them out, throw them in chat, whatever you feel most comfortable with, and we'll try to get to as many questions as we possibly can. And welcome, Jay.
Hello.
So I don't want to spend too much time because honestly, it really, most people in the industry have heard me one way or the other talk about managed service. The
Sure.
key things I'm going to say is if you're an MSP, you're looking to get into co-manage or you're already into co-manage, it has to be scalable. It has to be something that you can do for more than one client because at the end of the day, the managed service model, Dan, like you said, there is no specific definition. But for your organization, at the end of the day, you make more money by doing the same thing for more than one client. Whether it be, if you had one RMM tool for this client, one PSA for this client, one backup for this client, there's no way that your team can support it, so on and so forth. The same thing is true for a co-managed strategy. If you have a co-managed strategy that is always written specifically for each individual client, there's no way you're going to be able to make profit margins or be consistent in terms of service delivery. So you have to have something that is relatively specific, relatively static, but it's malleable enough to meet the needs of such whiny, annoying clients, such as we're going to talk about, in a moment or so.
Well, speaking of Danny, sorry, I had to go that route, right? So no, but speaking of a client, Danny, you have decided to engage with Bob and Simplex IT. You assume I can only assume that you were pulling your hair out even though you have a full head of hair and you were looking for a different way to manage your IT. Maybe you could give us a little background about how you were managing the technology prior to the co-managed environment.
Yeah, absolutely, Dan. Just a quick introduction. My name is Danny Olin. And then for all of the people in the meeting, I am not an MSP owner. I don't work in the MSP world. I'm an IT manager for a CPA and accounting firm. So I'm going to give I guess, somewhat of a unique perspective directly from a client. So, with that being said, when we got into starting to think about co-managed, we originally were working with a full service MSP, with primarily being we were hands off. Now, this worked to a good enough degree when we didn't have a lot of on-site IT staff, or in-house rather. So Corrigan Krause, which is the CPA firm that I worked for, brought me on about 5 years ago now. And when I got here, I started to notice some things that we might be able to do a bit better. Things that if we had like our own full ownership of, we could probably make a bit more efficient. And when I started to notice those things through discussions with management, we kind of came to the thought process that, what if we went more of an in-house route, but still having that full support system being backed by an MSP. So thankfully, and Bob dates himself, so I have no qualm saying this, but our CFO, or not CFO, our COO had worked with Bob in another lifetime. So we already had that experience with Bob, so that prompted us to reach out to him. And what we did was we kind of explained our situation to him. We didn't actively seek out a co-managed solution, but we had a certain set of needs that needed to be met. And it just so happened that Bob says, well, Danny, guess what? I'm the godfather of co-managed IT. So I say, well, what is that? What truly is co-managed? So right over there on my shelf, I've got the whole the whole book set from Bob, dated and signed. So I'll put those in some minted graded cases. And I'll resell them at a later date. But it kind of opened our eyes to truly what co-managed meant. The biggest thing for us with co-managed is if we have a smaller internal team that might not be able to provide the full suite of support tools to our entire staff, it's extremely helpful for plugging in those gaps to supplement the areas that you're going to need assistance on. But the caveat to that is we're in the financial industry and we work with a lot of application specific technology, such as the various tax softwares and stuff. Myself and my team are already subject matter experts on that. And it's a lot easier for us to be our own subject matter experts and have the MSP provide the co-managed tool set to support us. And that's one of the things that really comes into play that, I feel like the co-managed solution is supporting and empowering my team rather than us looking towards an MSP for the full suite of offerings and basically being beholden to them. So that's where the co-managed solution really comes into play, is having that flexibility to kind of, it's not really a la carte in the sense that you say, I want this, and that, but it's more so being able to support our team where we need that support rather than just a blanket. And then another huge thing is, along with providing those tools, it also provides a lot of that vendor management that goes along with the, your service contracts with Microsoft, with your RMM tools, with your antivirus, et cetera. Having that vendor management kind of be offloaded onto somebody else is always a good thing.
Yeah.
It frees us up a lot more. So Bob, keep it up.
All right.
That it truly gives us ownership over those tools. At the end of the day, it's not, here's your tools, we're going to limit your access. No, it's here's your tools, we're going to empower you to use those tools, and you use them with what works best in your industry. Obviously, as long as you're not going around and misusing them, of course, but it's a far cry from where we used to be, where we were somewhat limited in what we could do. But having that co-manage has it's explored a different way of doing things. And it works very well, especially for more of a specialized industry like the financial industry.
And I've had conversations with IT directors, IT managers like yourself, where the conversation has been, we're doing our best, we're taking care of our internal clients, our end users, but we don't have the real tools that we need, or the policies and procedures and all those processes. And we really want to do things in a different way. We want to be more efficient, more effective at how we deliver our services. And also, we're really strapped for time and resources. There's so much that we want to accomplish, but there's so much that we know that we just aren't being as efficient in accomplishing the things that we have on our plate. Fires, constant fires. We're always having to put a fire out, and that's keeping us from, being able to do some of the higher, some of the things that have, much more of a return on the investment, and things that are really going to impact and help drive the business forward. Do you feel like that is kind of what you ran into as well?
Yeah, absolutely, Dan. So, we used to be a fire-oriented company. You'd come in, you'd check the list of emails, you'd say, all right, what fire am I putting out today? And I think that's pretty normal fare with a lot of IT folk. It's a lot of it seems to be reactive. What we
Right.
found is moving towards a co-managed has allowed us to be a little bit more proactive, which I think is more of an ideal approach. It has freed us up to to because when we have ownership over our own infrastructure, tool set, et cetera, we've been able to dial it in to the point where we can become proactive and free up that time for, like you mentioned, policies, procedures, compliance, anything of that nature. Documentation, that one's huge for us. We like to be very documented, so we can have easily replicatable procedures for any staff looking to, solve particular issues. But yeah, kind of speaking on that is moving away from more of the what fire am I putting out today versus what task am I going to accomplish today. That's one thing I like to empower my team to do is, what do you want to focus on for the week? What is your goal for the week? So it certainly has allowed us to kind of move more towards our ideal way of operating.
And one thing that I've always sold to our prospects on the managed services side is that we provide more of the more of the crystal ball approach than the magic 8 ball. So we have insights into what's going on, so we can be more proactive versus that magic 8 ball where you come in, you shake it, and say, are things going to work today? And I can only imagine that that carries right over to the same world of of internal IT. It's just the same thing. And so that co-managed provides you that tool set and those policies, process, procedures that you gives you more vision. So Bob, when you reached out or when you had spoke to Danny, I know there was some relationship there previously. Ultimately, what were some of the things that you were wanting to learn from them as far as whether or not they were a good fit as a co-managed opportunity?
So to be blunt, Danny was the wild card.
Okay.
Okay. And it's one of those where and back at us here is from the standpoint of because we bring the tools, but it's not just the tools. Because they can go out, the internal IT can go out and purchase the tools and blah, blah, blah. It's we've implemented those tools for 60, 80 companies already. We know how they work. So when we first talk to that internal IT, we got to say, are you willing to work with us in terms of our best ways to implement them and to manage them, giving you the freedom to use them as they need to be for your organization? Because at the end of the day, if you think about it, we understand the tools overall from an industrial standpoint and how those tools can best be used overall. Danny understands the needs of that location of Corrigan Krause better than we
Right.
ever will. And thankfully, Danny caught right on to it. And so we were basically able to say, yeah, there is that, because one of the challenges you have is either the MSP basically says, and this is to a certain degree, I think what you had before, this is what we do. We'll let you touch some of it, but not much.
Yes.
Okay. And or the internal IT person saying, I only know one way to do these things, and by gum, that's how I'm going to do it.
Sure.
And if either of those attitudes are there, co-managed ain't going to work.
Right.
So we need to make sure, and I've said this before many times, the only thing worse than a great co-managed opportunity getting away is a bad one signing. So you need to go through that discovery process on both sides that goes above and beyond the agreement or contract or what are you going to, and just make sure, are you willing to see that? And Norm had a good comment here. Upper management has to see IT as not a cost center.
Right.
Because if you don't know that Danny can bring more value to the client doing things specific for the accounting application in the accounting world and journey, and he will be able to do that better than we ever will. But we can
truly
bring
the
and
best
can
of both
fit.
worlds.
What's that?
It's truly the best of both worlds. And and like you said, the whole butting of heads, if there's two different thoughts or methodologies or attitudes, whatever the case may be, if they don't come together and fit like a glove, I mean, not everything's going to be 100% perfect, but
Right.
if they're not as close as possible, then it's just failed effort. And, if we truly are here to benefit the client, what that means is that it benefits both of us equally, and it has to be win-win.
No, it has to be win-win-win. This is a three-legged stool.
Okay.
Okay, because the relationship that we have with Danny is different than the relationship that we have with the management at Corrigan Krause. Because at the end of the day, Danny and I both work to make Corrigan Krause a better organization.
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
which if in a traditional managed service agreement, Simplex IT works to make that client more successful organization. So
Yep.
on one hand, we have to measure the success of this relationship by basically saying, Danny, are you better? Are you stronger? Are you more productive? Are are you having a better time experience? Whatever you want to call it, however he defines value and success. I have to have that, otherwise it's adversarial.
Right.
But at the same time, we've got to have, and this is a collective conversation, both Danny and I have to, he's got, in this particular case, he's much more in touch with the management over at Corrigan than I am. I'm basically being more subservient, which is absolutely fine, to Danny, or my team is more subservient to Danny in terms of how we deal with Corrigan Krause stuff. That's absolutely fine. But at the end of the day, they have to, they've got to see the value that we're both presenting. If any of those legs of the stool falls off for any particular period of time, it gets bad.
Yeah. No, I like that. And Norm added here a question, and there's additional question that came through to me directly that I'll jump over to. But as far as having internal access, full access to the tools, so is that how it works for you, Danny? You have, full access to the tool set, and you can jump in and do whatever you need to do.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So kind of depends. I guess full access, as Norm put in quotes, it's to define that I have full access for most of the things that I need to get done. But when I think of full access, I don't have tenant level admin access, so I can't go in to see Bob's other clients as it should be.
Sure.
There
Yep.
are some functions that I potentially am limited to that could affect other tenants and stuff like that. But it's a simple request out to Bob's team, like, hey, can I get this done? It's a immediate yes, let's get it done, or maybe let's rework how we approach it and get it done in the context of your co-managed agreement. So it's very fluid with these tools, the ability to access them as you need.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So really to repeat what Danny said, because for some reason I need to say it again, is on one hand, it is we will not give him access to anything that could potentially compromise another client.
Yep.
Okay. And some of the tools, we use Datto RMM. Okay. Good tool, great, all that kind of fun stuff. We can't give him scripting abilities, because if we gave him scripting capacity, that would potentially impact other clients. Can't do it.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
Similarly, if he wants access to other tools, and depending upon, we won't give him access that is using our credentials, because we need to track who's doing stuff and so on and so forth. But you can usually figure out a way to do it.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And the other question that came in, and this let's see, since I'm not a technician, how would you differentiate between offering a VCSO or a co-managed strategy to a prospect? So uh, two different things that could be sold separately, but also could be intertwined in some way. Bob, do you want to take that one?
Yeah. So you have to be careful on this one. First of all, it really should be something you're offering to your normal clients. Okay. If you're not doing VCSO for your clients, then why are you creating this new product, this new package, this new service that's going to be co-managed? I get in some cases why you might want to do it, but you're basically creating another company, okay, or another service process and all that kind of fun stuff. At the end of the day, we want Right now, we're just about break even. About 40–50% of our clients are co-managed. And I want my
Okay.
techs, I want our process to be able to handle the co-managed and the fully managed clients pretty much the same way. Just some things we do, some things the internal IT does, like Danny. When you talk about vCISO, and this is one also, I have mixed feelings on cybersecurity as co-managed, because a lot of cases, in my opinion, the companies that I talk to, they actually are looking to abdicate their security responsibilities and liabilities. And so they will basically say, yeah, I don't have to worry about that. That's why I brought those simplex IT guys in there. If you're
Right.
just looking for that one delegation of things. So that I would say approach the vCISO or the vCIO thing as exclusive subsets. I would look to approach those as really more engagements, consultative engagements, than I would, here's your product. That said, if you've got it down, and I know there's some vendors who really push some of the security pieces parts as co-managed options, you just got to be, you have to have it well defined as far as what you do, what you don't do, where are the borders, where's the liability, where's the responsibility begin and end.
Yeah, and to kind
Well,
of
Danny, let
piggyback
me
off.
ask.
Oh, go
Oh,
ahead.
go ahead, Danny.
Oh, I was going to say, to kind of piggyback off of what Bob was saying, I think, yeah, the vCISO and the vCIO makes sense to segment those away from your standard offering. One thing I can say that we have as a part of our co-managed agreement are these business technology and business reviews, maybe every couple of quarters or every year or something, where we can dive into that kind of stuff at that time, but it's not necessarily a primary facet of the agreement. But it's not essentially just saying, here, Bob, handle all of this. Like myself and my team, we are handling it, but Bob still has that level of insight into what we are doing to provide, possible best practices, things of that nature.
And would you say that, I guess I have two questions, and I'm not sure if they're going to be similar answers, but that by bringing in Simplex IT for all the co-managed, that you've completely elevated your role as what an IT manager is in the organization versus feeling as if, you know, hey, I'm just, I have a title but I'm still just doing so many things that are remedial and trivial. And, I wish I didn't have to do X, Y, and Z. And it's just elevated what you can do, and it allows you to maximize your return on the investment, from a salary perspective for your organization.
Yeah, absolutely. I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt. So we came on with Bob, I want to say, what do you think, about 2 years ago or so?
Yep.
Something right. About 2 years ago. We've elevated a ton over here. We used to, I don't want to say not have an IT department, but our IT department consisted primarily of outsourced MSPs, and then maybe like a level one or like a net admin kind of on staff. And it's been that way for several years at CK. And when I came on board, ironically, I had worked for the two MSPs ago for Corrigan Krause as a network administrator for Corrigan Krause. And then after
Okay.
several years, I was on my own and then was brought on board internally at CK. So I had an established relationship with the company. I knew their inner procedures, I knew management, et cetera. So I might be in a bit more of a unique scenario where I had the finger to the pulse of the company. But when we decided to move to that co-manage, we elevated, we fleshed out and created a true IT department at the firm. We set established roles. We were able to really get everything set to how we wanted it to be. We were going to be able to realize a vision. And through doing that, it has gotten me out of the weeds of my printer won't work to focusing on, okay, I know that the FTC mandates I have a written information security policy. They just released a new amendment. I got to go back and check this stuff. So I'm able to focus on a lot higher level things. and work on things with our management committee rather than kind of going back to what we were talking about, putting out those fires. And it has been a true boon to be able to focus on that higher level stuff, because by doing that, it has made us able to progress rather than stay afloat. And that's one of the huge benefits that we've been able to realize. And on top of that, by going co-managed, we've been able to cut down on some costs, which is always great. Our firm has always operated as a performance-oriented firm, so saving money is great, but it wasn't the utmost concern for us.
Sure. So when kind of a two-part question here is when you give updates to upper management, being able to justify, hey, this was the right decision. Are you able to pretty easily articulate, the details that they're looking for? And maybe you can, tell us too, what are some of those details that management was looking for to say, you know what, Danny, this was definitely the right decision. And I'm glad you're bringing, you're showing us, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, as far as, these are our key performance indicators.
Yeah, that's a great question. So at the onset of our project, we pretty much set X number of KPIs, or goals rather, that we wanted to hit by moving towards a co-managed solution. And we actually just did basically like a review several months ago to kind of reevaluate, was this project a true success? So we hit KPIs, like ticketing times versus previous, cost savings of, let's just say, for instance, our compute and storage. As far as are we better on policies and procedures? Are we better in the compliance realm? Big one, are we better in cybersecurity? Before, when we were looking to do somewhat, like some security vulnerability testing and pen tests, some MSPs, in my experience, have been apprehensive to do them, but that varies from company to company, of course. But I can say that through our previous experience, there's been apprehension to do those, but now that we manage our own environment, we've been able to do those and produce those. And being in the financial industry, a lot of our clients are very data privacy concerned, because we deal a lot with financial information, other various PII. So sometimes they might request that specific type of info. Well, we can provide that now. So I think that's a great measurement of success as well. On top of that, we've been able to quantify our savings as far as, like I mentioned earlier. It just depends on what KPIs you want to measure, and if you can reasonably achieve those. I think it's important to set realistic expectations up front and work with your co-managed provider. Bob, as I'm sure you're all well aware, he can be very blunt, but he's very reasonable and he makes sense. So he'll tell you right up front, like, Danny, this is stupid. It's not feasible. As you guys know him.
Bob
So
would never be that insulting.
no,
Come
not
on.
Bob, right?
Hey, shut up, Jay.
Bob sugarcoats everything. I mean, I've never seen Bob blunt and direct. This must be a different Bob that we're talking about. No, Bob is a truly a leader that builds up his team. The things that we've heard from him. The way Bob's told us. No, but Bob, yeah, I mean, from a policies, procedures, and from the ability to find a solution that truly is going to work for him and the clients. Just, yeah, he's a great guy. And so I guess that's enough. We don't want to build Bob's head up too much here, but
I'm married. It gets torn down immediately. Don't worry about
there
it.
you go. There you go. Well, you need a little bit of something to, pull you along throughout the day, but
Yeah, get you through
you
the
can't,
day.
yeah, you can't constantly drink coffee, but yeah. So the one question I have is, what does the interaction look like with Simplex? How frequent is the interaction? Is it daily? Is it weekly? What does that look like?
Yeah, the interaction. So we don't utilize their service desk as our primary means of support. So if there are any project-based tickets, we pretty much are T&M. But here's the biggest thing to me. If and when I reach out to Bob and his team, there's support. It's no different than if I were a full service MSP. So like Bob was saying earlier, it's important to kind of standardize that service offering, whether or not you're going to be full service versus the co-manage. I feel no different than if I were completely under Bob's wing. So I'm getting the full level of support. The staff are great. They're supportive. And then as far as just, relationship management, Bob, me and him BS on the phone every couple of months, whatever. And then, like I mentioned earlier, the technology and business reviews, that's more of a comprehensive sit down. We'll go out to the office, we'll do it online, et cetera. And then that's a full review of the scope of let's say you're in Azure. It's a full scope review of your tenant. Here's a review of your policies. He'll score you this and that, blah, blah, blah. So there's constant communication. And that's one of the things that we really appreciate, because sometimes we had felt in the past that we were out on an island,
Yeah.
an island without a paddle or a boat to get off of, because we were still under the
Right.
purview of that company or that MSP, and we didn't have the tools or the ownership of said tools to kind of pull ourselves out of that island, if that makes sense.
Right. Right.
Let me
And,
interject a couple of things here. One is that Simplex IT does not allow me to actually perform TBRs.
I was pumping
No.
you up there, Bob.
What's that?
I was pumping you up.
Yeah.
This audience knows already.
I can't slip
No,
it by
but
them,
it's
huh?
one of those where you and I will have the conversations where we talk about, like you and I had a conversation this morning where we were talking about some of the AI opportunities and meetups that I recommended, because you guys are getting more into some of the big data analysis,
Yeah.
AI tools, all that kind of fun stuff. We were also talking about some of the new Microsoft hardware that's going to be coming out. So I'm going to talk to you more about some of the adjustments, the big picture, those kind of things. Just hey, what about this idea, so on and so forth. The other thing is to all of the MSPs here is keep in mind everything that he said. You could almost say for a pure MSP relationship.
Sure.
Okay. So we're not creating a brand new way of doing business. We're just talking about who's going to be responsible for doing some of these things. And we've got co-managed clients. We're onboarding a trucking company right now, small company, significantly smaller than Corrigan. 15 users and a bunch of servers, and they've got an IT guy who can really do desktop stuff. That's it. Can't do server, can't do infrastructure, can't do security plan, strategic planning, any of that sort of stuff. So we take what Danny is talking about, which we call full commits, because he's fully responsible for the day-to-day operations of using the tools and all that kind of stuff. In his case, we've got desktop commits, where the internal IT person is responsible for all the end user and the desktop stuff. We handle all the other things. And we can kind of zoom in and out by basically, in his case, he's not looking as much of a content expert or a vertical expert as Danny is. So he's looking just to keep the stuff working and all that kind of good stuff. We'll do more of the CIO level at working with management, making sure that the internal IT person is brought into it, so we're not bushwhacking him at all. And he can still do the stuff because he knows trucking companies better than we do. But it's the same product. It's the same offering.
And there's really no other way to do it. There's no other right way to truly do that if you want to be efficient and effective in delivering the service, because then it's like having a different stack for every client. I mean, like if you had 12 different firewalls and, you're having to figure out, okay, which firewall does this client have? Which one does that have? So by delivering the same offering in, like you're saying, just determining who is responsible for what, essentially you're just scaling back, like pulling back some of the things that you would be more hands-on with a managed client versus co-managed client, right?
Yeah, and that's one of the biggest, one of my pet peeves for our industry is we are so damned inconsistent as far as co-managed, and we've got one potential client we're talking to who is looking at another view, or they're looking at another MSP who's offering co-managed, and the IT person is like, man, I really want you guys, Danny, you talk to the guy, really want you guys to come in. I don't want the other guys. And we were actually shown a copy of the co-managed presentation from the other MSP. What they're doing is they're going to install the RMM tool. That's it.
Mm.
The RMM tool is going to be used for patching and updating and all that. But if you actually need to do anything, submit a ticket and they'll bill you time and material for. They're not
Gotcha.
even giving the IT person access to the RMM tool, but they're
Okay.
calling it co-managed.
So there's Mike's got a couple questions, and really this question I think could be could really be answered by either of you two gentlemen. What are some of the red flags to look out for a client that's not going to be a good fit for co-managed?
Well, first of all, if he puts like paper signs on his wall that point to nothing, that's got to be a flag of some kind or another.
Well, I just envision do people come in like with their laptop and then they just plunk it down on the desk right there, right?
Yeah, I'm telling you, I do put the need maintenance over there. I need to move that sign. It does make it's kind of inflating. Like it's no, that shouldn't be there. But
Yeah.
I'm not going to get into whether that's proactive or reactive.
Right.
So the first thing, Mike, is the client has to match your culture. Okay, and so you can use some of the same concepts of, is it going to be a good fit for you, that you would use for your regular managed service offerings? That's number one. Okay. The second is that if they want you to come in and manage things the way they already are managing it and the way they're already doing it and their tools and all that kind of fun stuff, how are you going to do that and make any money?
Mhm.
So you
Right.
need to come in. So the trucking company I mentioned, they had just bought into a security that they got a renewal on their antivirus before they decided to contact us. So they paid X number of dollars for a 12-month renewal for antivirus. And I basically said, I'm not going to use yours. I don't, we're a Sophos partner and we enjoy Sophos. So, and I said, but this is what I will do. Give me an invoice. I will give you a 50% credit for the remaining time that's on that agreement so that we're both suffering, but I'm going to install our own tools.
Yep.
Okay. So if they're basically, whether it be operational, procedural, whatever, if they're so into they have to do it their way, that's to me is a big red flag. And if they don't look at this, as you could hear from what Danny was saying, this is a partnership and it's a two-way partnership. And if they don't understand the fact that at the end of each month, you have to look at them and go, I'm making enough money, this is worthwhile. And they have and they have to look at you and say, we're getting enough value, our company is doing better, this is worthwhile. If they don't recognize that value proposition, and if you don't recognize that value proposition, that's a red flag.
So on the flip side, Danny, when you take a look at looking at a co-managed provider, what would you say the things would be that you would say these guys are not a fit? Like if you were looking at four different providers and you're trying to determine, okay, what is the criteria? Ultimately, what are some of those things, in answering Mike's question from your perspective as an IT manager, that you would say it's just not a fit for us?
one of the biggest things I think is kind of what Bob was just saying is I view the co-managed as a partnership. Just like he had mentioned, is we're both in it to gain value. A full service MSP is we get the value of the services you provide, but in my own personal opinion is it's more of a one-way sort of thing where I'm paying for the services and I'm getting that value. You're making your money, sure, but with the co-managed, the value I'm getting out of the relationship is a lot more than just the service offering because it is empowering our internal IT department to provide so much more than just that. Like I mentioned earlier, is it allows us to focus on that higher level stuff. So I think if the co-managed provider or the MSP in this case is focusing on the partnership aspect, then that's a big thing for us, as well as, we like the flexibility. We do prefer some flexibility, but I'll be honest, when we came on with Bob, we drank the Kool-Aid in a sense, and we're gonna do things the simplex way as far as the tool sets and everything goes. But I'll tell you what, by doing it that way, it makes the translation of when we request service from Bob that much easier.
Yeah.
But because he knows his tools, we
Yeah.
know what we're trying to achieve. How is he gonna formulate a solution in the context of our tool set or his tool set to best service us? So if you get into a co-manage where you're starting to get too flexible, then in my opinion, I don't think that's going to work,
Yeah.
because then you're going to have differing things. You're going to have this person trying to do it this way, this person trying to do it that way. So that was a big thing for us as well. And I'm Bob is aware of this as well. We were looking at another company too that they were too flexible. Straight up, they were just like, "What do you want? We'll do whatever you want." We were looking for more of that structured approach, which, as you know, Bob said, you're going to do it the simplex way. Is that okay?
Right.
And you know what? It makes sense. That's the thing. It makes sense because we saw what he was truly saying, rather than just being a stickler and saying, "No, I'm not going to let you do it." He was doing it in a reasonable approach.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, because I think in my eyes, if somebody is that flexible, that probably tells you that they're not mature enough. They don't have those policies and procedures in place, and they might be looking for you to tell them how they should be running their business. And
Exactly.
and yeah, and so the other question that Mike had was any war stories, and I'm not 100% sure,
No, I meant like any stories of ones where you thought you were okay and then got started in the agreement and then wish you'd never gone down
Okay,
that
so more
path.
for Bob's
Just
perspective,
for
yeah.
more,
That
yeah,
involved
context
Danny,
of
because
what to
that
look
could take
for.
all day.
Yeah.
I knew he was going to have a comment. I was waiting for it.
I've got one where I've got two co-managed that have worked out really well. And I mean, we're 3-4 years, actually 26, 8 years in on one of them. So that's worked well. I've got one though that I did a little more than a year ago when we went to renew, and I said, "Hey, we started off talking co-managed, and I gave you a steep discount because all the tickets were going to run through you." And I even went into our portal and I made them a ConnectWise manage calls it a slipstream user or something like that. So you pay less for the license, but yeah, so put them in there so they could touch every ticket first and then tell us what they wanted to do. That lasted maybe a month, and
Yep.
people just started reaching out to us directly. And okay, we can do the work. And my philosophy's always been like, I hate the employees that say like, oh, if you pay me more, I'll do more. But like that never happens. And so it's always like, show me you can do more, and then I'll be happy to pay you more. You know what I mean? And so
Yeah.
in this case, for them, I was like, all right, we'll just do it, and we'll show them that we can make their lives easier and show her how much time she's going to have back in her day because she's not dealing with stuff she's not familiar with anyways. Um, but then we came time for renewal, and I'm like, hey, this is where we gotta be to make it work for them. Oh man, really? Like, and so now I'm trying to,
Right.
demonstrate the value and, um,
Yeah.
but that's not a horror story. It's worked.
Yeah.
Um,
Right. Right.
but
So
from the sounds of it, it sounded like you had some where you were like, oh wow, and maybe there was some signs of something that
Well, let
during
me
the
throw
interview you.
something out there. I just throw out an example. We have in full disclosure, we are pure MSP. We don't have any co-managed relationships. We had one of our larger accounts last year who decided that they wanted to go co-managed. the conversations that we had with them, with the team that would be co-managed. The team were actually part of a different division, and they wanted to pull them into the division that we were fully managing for them. And the conversations that we had with these, these IT people, the director, were rather scary. Their processes and their thoughts on managing technology just did not align with the way we would manage it. And and I mean, they said that they wanted to jump in during this process. They're no longer a client. We determined that they were no longer a fit just based on the direction that they wanted to go. But, they were building out some computers, getting them set up, and they were done in a very amateurish way. And it's just not how we would want to deliver our services, because in the long term, it's only going to lead to problems. So we determined that it just isn't a fit, and that was it. They were still into their contract. We've talked about them before. And they had to pay through the remainder of the rest of their managed services contract.
So
Um, you
it
know,
sounds like in the interview, if you ask about processes, if they have processes that don't exist or that exist and are terrible, that's a red
yeah,
flag that you want to get out of there.
Yeah, I mean, I think too, we always have that conversation just culturally, like Bob said, from the start, there, regardless of whether it's going to be fully managed or a co-managed, I think, the cultural aspects of how the two organizations are going to work together, is first and foremost. But then if we're talking about a co-managed, and I should, let Bob jump in here, is, then you're doing the same evaluation, not only, beyond the cultural aspect. You're also looking at, okay, what does the team look like that's going to be managing it, and are we going to be able to work together with them? Bob, would that be what you would say as well?
So again, think about it from the standpoint of what are the red flags that you would have for a full managed service client? They're not going to take you seriously. They don't mind tech debt. They want you to support really old crap, all of that kind of fun stuff. It's the same question when you're
Right.
talking about who's a good co-managed client. If it looks like the internal IT people are lazy, they don't want to learn anything, they don't want to do anything different than the way they've been doing it, they're okay with this. Yeah, we started up a computer and we were able to log on to it, so we're going to ship it. All of that kind of fun stuff. And if they just have that laissez-faire attitude and your organization doesn't, it's a bad fit. Okay.
Yeah.
And so at the end of the day, if they're not going to work as an extension of you, and you don't feel comfortable working as an extension of them, it ain't going to work. For all purposes, we are Danny's internal IT support people, network, all that kind of fun stuff, as far as the tools, management, so on and so forth. When it comes to working on the alerts and working on the tools and taking the alerts, Danny's an extension of us.
Right.
Okay. And in both cases, we respect how we're doing things. They're close enough working together that we will make things happen. I'm not going to let Danny make changes to how we do things unless there's a damn good reason and a way we can do it that doesn't cause issues or challenges.
Right.
So it's not that hard from a technical standpoint, but it is hard from a human standpoint. And especially if you're looking at, oh boy, I want to get into this co-managed thing. It's absolutely great. It's wonderful. Yeah, if it's done right.
Yeah.
And
And
a
just like
bad managed service client ain't nothing compared to a bad co-managed client.
well, and like we talked about, recently is, we've got to move past the somebody wants to spend money with me, right? Because the cliche, not all money, not all revenue is good revenue. We
Yep.
have to truly make sure that it's a good fit for both parties. We just have a couple minutes left. Have time for one more question, one more short question. Does anybody have one out there?
I'd suggest for anybody that thinks that all money is good money to read the pumpkin plan for MSPs.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Others? Danny, do you want to just in the last couple of minutes share some additional thoughts that you have as far as co-managed relationship and what MSPs should be thinking about?
Yeah, absolutely. So kind of piggybacking off of the conversation from the question and the comments from Mike is that, you know, it's very important for both parties to be aligned. That's the biggest thing is that alignment. And I can't speak from the MSP side. I can speak from the client side, of course, but you kind of almost fabricate that alignment by having your co-managed client do things your way, because by setting forth those expectations and that alignment, you're kind of setting yourself up for success in that regard. Now, granted, I do things how I want to do them with my own staff and for CK. But when it comes to the management of the tool sets that we share with Bob, we're doing the processes and procedures agreed upon together when we forge the relationship. So we have that alignment together. So there's no confusion when it comes time to renew. Like Mike had mentioned, well, hey, we've been doing your tickets for the past, year and a half, and we saved you X amount of time, which translates to X amount of dollars. We're hoping for a little bit better of an agreement, but that person doesn't understand because they thought it was a part of the agreement up front. So I think setting those expectations up front, it's not only going to help your side as the MSP, but it also helps us as the client understand, what boundaries are and what type of expectations are in the relationship. That's one thing that we have really appreciated working with Bob over the years.
Excellent. And Bob, I know this might be very difficult, but in 30 seconds, could you give any parting words for our audience?
Get off my lawn. Here's the advice. If you go co-managed, start with what we call silo, which is a specific subset. You're only doing backups. You're only doing MDR. You're only doing this. You're only doing that. Silo is the easiest way to get into co-managed from a offering, marketing, sales, all that. Go to my Simplex IT website. We've got all sorts of stuff on that. But the bottom line is your co-managed offering should not create a significant amount of additional stress or pressure on your managed service practice in terms of how you do day-to-day operational work. Unless you really know you're going to make a ton of money, not sell a ton. Yeah. So.
And I just shared Bob's website. And as I see, one of the main things that it says on the website is saving the world from IT jerks. And I love it. But Bob has got his books on there. Bob, I do have the right website, right?
Well, that's the one, that coaching thing, that I really have not done much with that site in a while. You're honestly better off to look at the Simplex IT site, because we've actually done about I'm not kidding, over the last 3 years, we've done about 700 videos on various topics, including a lot on co-managed. And I really do think that silo IT, if you're looking to dabble your toes, especially in terms of formalizing what you do and going out, start with silo. Silo's the easiest one to get involved with.
Excellent. I just added that other link to Simplex IT. And I want to thank Bob and Danny, both of you, greatly for your time and knowledge today. Hope everybody has a great rest of your day, and we'll talk to everybody soon. Take care, everybody. Peace
So
out.
long, boys.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Thank you guys very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you, gentlemen.